everyone, welcome back to alkaline hydroxide 784, and today in the GPO series we'll be looking at psychology. Well, if you're wondering whether I'm even qualified to talk about this, if playing 3 games from here and watching a whole lot of Psych videos count, then I guess. Otherwise, no, I'm definitely not an expert in this. I can tell that myself. Okay. And some of you might be wondering, why am I even doing this? It would be like, you might be wondering, oh, you like bioengineering, and then you say you like linguistics, and now you say you like psych. Well, I doubt anyone can deal with liking too many things. My response is no, I don't actually like it as much as linguistics or bioengineering or anything. I just find it interesting. but in reality I'm not much of an expert on it, and I haven't really read anything in great detail. In contrast, I've definitely looked at the language families on Wikipedia, so yeah, there's a difference. So why did I even choose this topic? I'm not an expert on it, and I don't even know what I'm doing. Do I? Okay. Well, the reason why, well, why not? That's my reason. Why not? I mean, psychology seems so mysterious and also pretty under talked about, apart from Freud, if that's your thing. So we should probably talk about it to find out more about this topic. So I'll be covering 3 things. I might have wanted to cover the history of it, but that will take too long to do, so I won't do that. You can just look that up yourself because it's not super relevant to GP itself. Like in GP, if you talk too much about something in the past, then it doesn't really make sense. So instead, I'll be talking about the importance of the topic, the controversies that it faces, and the challenges. Okay, so first we will look at the importance of psychology. So why is psychology actually important? Well, as I was playing those games, I realized just how important it is. It can literally help you to understand human relationships and why people behave in certain ways. You might think that psychology is mainly used for diagnosing neuro diseases and figuring out why people like to almost reproduce but not actually reproduce. Yeah, but it's also used in places you wouldn't have even thought of until I tell you, and then you'll be like, yeah, huh? It's definitely used in a lot of places. Okay, so here's one very obvious and very significant place where it's used, which is in shopping. Yeah, that's actually pretty unsurprising. It's used in shops of all kinds, but I'll be talking mainly about grocery shops and online shopping. So in grocery shops like NTUC, I guess, but really NTUC is not really that. I mean, it's okay lah. Like in America, they really go all out with their psychology tricks just to try to get people to buy stuff. I think here is not so strong, I guess, but in the US, definitely there's a lot of things that you can see. But in grocery shopping in general, there's so many ways that the customer can be psychologically made to buy more than they want, or to buy more expensive stuff, or just waste too much time in there until they just don't know what they're doing. What did they even come here to buy for? Who knows? Well, these can involve all of your senses from your sight, for example, the location of an object. So the objects at eye level will be sold better, so they put the expensive stuff there. To your sense of direction, well, your IKEA maze, obviously. I mean, even grocery shops have some idea of what to do with the direction, so they put things that are quite important all the way into the stall so that you can store, so that you need to pass by a gazillion other things to reach those objects. And your sense of hearing, well, unfortunately they don't do it properly here. They just play like Chinese New Year songs and I don't know, other songs during the respective festivals. But in the US, they apparently use songs for ambience and just to make people feel like doing certain things, maybe impulsive buying, I guess. Yeah, and even your sense of smell, which again isn't really done here, it's done in the US, of course. They spray certain scents to make you feel like you're like this whole sensory experience when you're buying your food. And it's not just the grocers. The food companies themselves use tricks like making your chips bag 50% air. We all know what we're talking about here. Placing health labels even when they are pretty meh in reality. They're not really all that healthy as you think they are. They're okay, but not really that great. And using new packaging to make it seem like something had improved when in reality it's the same thing but just the packaging changed. So honestly, there is so much going on that you can just like watch all of these videos that I'll try to find the link and put them there for more, because I kind of find it very fun to watch all those videos where they tell all the tricks that they use. So what about online? Well, the main thing here is that online shops deny most of your sensory experience. So this is very different from a real shop where you can take advantage of that. And the most important of them all is the touch. You can't touch the object. You cannot be close up to the object. So you're forced to rely almost exclusively on your sight, aka the appearance of the object. Hence, much like YouTube clickbait, the best or even inaccurate but still aesthetic pictures of the object are used to attract your attention, along with tongue twister captions. But looking at you, wish. And to add to that, all those discounts that only apply per purchase and the promise of free shipping above a minimum amount really get you to spend more. And that's just the online shops themselves. You see those ads all over the place. Like there's so many ads everywhere, right? That get you to buy certain products. You see them in Instagram, you see them in Snapchat and in Facebook and in all the social medias. And also when you're just randomly searching the webs and like literally everywhere. Okay, cool. So these ads also glorify the product that they're selling, and that's what supposedly makes you want to buy it in a sense. And of course, using AI, they can even selectively choose what ads to show. So, you know, like they try their best to make sure that the people who they think will buy the product will actually see the ad and then buy it. Speaking of ads, it's probably easier to find how things are manipulated in traditional ads. So that's more well documented in the sense. So for example, you have like the Japanese ad that use, really interesting stories like the long man or something. Or they just have like really absurd ads that make no sense to what product they're selling. And therefore they just capture your attention the whole way, and then you kind of actually do want to buy the product. Or maybe not, you're just interested in the ad and you just watch it and go. Or you have like all the food ads from like the fast food companies that use fake food to advertise the best looking burger. So that thing may not even be a real thing. It could be just a fake version of a burger, or it could be an actual one but with some extra enhancements. There's actually quite a few tricks that they use, and it's quite interesting to watch them. And of course, the usual ads using Photoshop, just Photoshop it into a nice looking thing, or a nice looking person for that matter. If you're selling clothes, you Photoshop the person. If you're selling stuff, you Photoshop the stuff. Yeah, you can actually Photoshop stuff, I guess. Okay, never mind. And of course, we have like ads targeting kids specifically, because there are two ways. Like either they sell kids things, so the kids would really want to buy the thing and they'll go and pester their parents to buy it, and those things will just be really useless, ineffective products. Like for example, they could be advertising like a lot of fun and a lot of or maybe like some sciencey thing or something like that, but in reality they're pretty useless. And that is actually true in North America, as evidenced by a whole lot of videos of people reviewing them. And the other way could be just by accident almost, because there are many apps in the phone, like some of the apps that are actually targeted towards children, like the little game thingies, but in reality they could just have some random ad lurking around and the kid doesn't even know what that ad is about, and then they click something and then something else happens. Yeah, so that is by accident kind of ads. Right, so Yeah, I think you're kind of bored of me talking about this, so let's see some even more interesting uses of psychology. So, one way can be seen by just playing the games I was talking about at the beginning, and it's in crimes in general. So, basically, how to prevent a potential crime. This would be used, for example, when someone is almost about to shoot a hostage or, try to do something really dangerous. And this can actually be prevented. Like, you can prevent that dangerous thing from happening using an expert psychologist and without any use of violence or without any ensuing of violence. And that is pretty cool actually if you think about it. Psychology can also be used to solve crimes. So, it's like the detective reasoning but to people's actions and people's interactions. Like you use your psychology knowledge to figure out what you're doing, I guess. Um, Unfortunately, I'm not sure how to do that. Okay. And it's also used for situations where many people act and interact with each other. This can include the formation of languages because, two different groups of people, they may have certain different ways of interacting and thinking about a certain object. Therefore, there's different names for the object in different languages, or there's even different ways of naming colors. Like certain colors are actually considered colors in one language and not really considered in another language. So it's all those things that can happen in language, and also psychology can be applied in the stock market. So, for example, why certain things happen in the stock market, like how the economic boom and economic recession occurs in the sense. So this could actually explain one of the things that happens in the Asian financial crisis, where once the US dollar the gold standard was basically removed, everyone realized that, oh no, the value of all these currencies is not going to be holding up, and therefore they start withdrawing from the market one by one, and that leads to a whole domino effect of many people doing it, which is what led to the crisis to begin with, because the banks couldn't give back all the money to all the people who wanted to take out all their money from the bank. Yeah, that's pretty much, it's kind of psychological in a sense. So yeah, apart from that, you can also use it in pandemic situations, like right now. You can probably see why people are not listening to certain rules, or what tactics are actually required to get people to follow what you want them to follow, in a sense. Or in other words, you could probably use it to figure out, maybe it could help you with your contact tracing, or it could help you with certain analysis of what are the best methods to use in order to make sure people don't spread the disease. Yeah, so it could be used in that as well. Could be used in educational settings, like how different like how the students interact with each other, how that can help their education or can impact them negatively, like peer pressure. It could be used in ethics, and then business hierarchy, and for personal purposes could be used in personal and business relationships. Yeah, so really I'm not an expert, and I don't really have full memory of everything that I've ever seen relating to psychology, so I'll just list some things quickly that I kind of remember. The first one would be like gaslighting. So in gaslighting, one person is kind of manipulating someone else, so it's a bit like brainwashing. And how they do it, of course they won't really be like, they may not always purposely trying to do it, in the sense that they won't always want to do it purposely, but they will try to impose a certain perception of themselves or the other party on the other party, in a sense. So maybe they could be saying, oh, you're wrong all the time, so the other party will end up thinking that they're always wrong. Or it could be anything else, actually, any kind of message or statement that ends up being embedded into the other person's mind, in a sense. So that is what gaslighting is, and it can actually be quite bad because it affects the other person a lot. Like they end up having a negative perception of themselves and having like a inferiority complex in the end because of this. So that's one thing. The second thing would be peer pressure, of course, which is what could be seen in educational settings. So peer pressure can be just as impactful as social media itself. So peer pressure can influence your fashion sense, your body image, how smart you feel, in the sense like maybe you feel like you're not like a imposter syndrome kind of thing. You may feel like you're not smart enough to be there, and many other things that can happen because of peer pressure, and also bullying, I guess. Yeah, so like the bystander effect, those kind of things, and also the effect of social distancing. So yeah, I did mention how to get people to follow instructions is one way of looking at it, but another thing that is more direct would be social distancing effects. So like the health effects of it, or the effect of not interacting with a lot of people, or the lack of stimulation, which may make some people a little bit crazy. Of course, this is a very unprofessional way to put it, but you get the idea. I think you should probably read actual sources for this, so don't just listen to what I say and then write that down. That's not an actual source, really, not a very reliable source. Okay, and of course there's definitely a lot more stuff that can be that is covered in this field, and I probably don't even know half of them. Okay, cool. So we get that psychology is pretty important, and because it has quite big implications, there have been quite a few controversies relating to it. But rather than the implication part of it, it's more of the ethical part of it that ends up being controversial. And this comes with the studies that have been conducted in psychology in the past, of course. Right now, I think it's a lot better because we have all these rules and ethical rules and stuff so that people don't do that. But in the past, there have definitely been some pretty controversial studies because those studies actually revealed a lot of useful information, but at what cost? Like, they had some pretty ethical problems in the sense, which you'll understand when I explain two of the controversial studies. So there's a link with a list of 10 such studies, but I'll just explain the first two because I've actually heard of it and they're probably more well documented. Okay, so the first one which is super well known, is the Stanford prison experiment, and it's very well documented. There's a video explaining everything on a website or something, so you can go and check them out. Okay, so basically what happened is of course I guess it was conducted by Stanford itself. So what they did was they literally simulated a prison in a sense, and they got 6 people, I believe, so 6 people for each side. So the two sides were like guards and prisoners. So one side gets to be the guards and one side has to be the prisoners. And what does that mean? You then get to see what happens when people put in that scenario, and they're told to behave like prisoners or like guards in a certain sense. Like they're told that that's their role. So of course what happens is that the guards become authoritative, and they become like they start trying to impose punishments on the prisoners, even though the prisoners in this case really haven't done anything wrong. They're just normal people who have been told to be prisoners in this experiment. And the prisoners started acting like prisoners too. Like they started becoming more like inclined to try to escape, and there was a lot of crazy things that happened there. So you should probably look at it for yourself. And they had to end it early for some people because it just became too extreme already. So this is actually an ethical problem because the people who are the guards started using violence in the sense, like they had the stick thing that the guards usually have, and they actually started hitting the people who are the prisoners per se, even though, as I said just now, they didn't do anything wrong. So in this scenario, it kind of showed that when people are given certain labels, they will start like instinctively acting like those labels, even though in reality they all know that they're just the same bunch of students and they're not they don't have like an actual special position, but more than just a label that they're given. So yeah, that it did reveal a lot of important information, but at the same time it was very ethically controversial because of the fact that those who are prisoners would have definitely faced some certain challenges or certain problems due to the people who are the guards in the sense, and the guards themselves would have certainly felt some sort of guilt maybe or some other problems after the experiment was over because they inflicted certain violence onto the prisoners and behaved in certain ways. So yeah, it's a bit controversial because of that. So the second one is the what's that thing called? Is the Milgram shock experiments. So in the Milgram shock experiment, what happens is the researcher tells someone to press a button to shock someone, and by pressing the button, the other person will kind of die from electric shock. So this was quite a problem because it sounds like such a big thing, it sounds like you're gonna kill someone by pressing a button or something like that lah. So but in reality no one actually died or anything like that. They just showed a video of someone who looked like they were getting really shocked and died, and because of that people would have felt this immensurable sense of guilt in the sense so yeah, that was just ethically messed up because it made people think like they were doing something really bad, but in reality they weren't doing anything bad. So yeah, that's the second one. And for the rest, you can go and see it yourself, I guess. If you find the link yourself, or if you just search up the name, maybe you'll get it. Okay, so apart from these kind of things, another thing that is definitely controversial is, Sigmund Freud. We talked about him right at the beginning, or maybe at least showed him, I guess. So he does have some questionable claims, like, the claim that all guys have a sexual fantasy for their mom. But he also does have some somewhat valid or at least improved on points. So for example, there's this thing that he proposed called psychoanalysis. And this theory kind of claims that humans have the unconscious mind, and you should use that to figure out their problems and stuff like that. And this thing actually has a lot of unusual things that came out of it, like analyzing different parts of the brain and stuff like that, like saying each part of the brain has a very specific function, and also the thing where you can try to look into someone's past lives and stuff like that. It also led to what we now consider therapy for mental illnesses. So it was like a foundation for a conventional therapy for mental problems and mental health issues, and made them more likely to be cured in some way or the other. So there's both good stuff and bad stuff that he did. So he's controversial in that sense, right? So so once we're done with the controversy, so now let's look at the last part, which is the challenges faced by psychology as a field. So apparently I'm not very good at figuring out the challenges because I do not have the point of view of someone who's actually in the field. But I'll just point out what I think are the challenges, and yeah, it's up to you to believe me or not. So the first one would be, of course, psychology studies, which I think is pretty obvious given the previous thing that we saw, which is the controversial studies. So you need to do certain things to find something, right? But the problem is, since in psychology the idea is seeing how people interact with each other and seeing how people behave in certain situations, they need to be quite careful when they do their studies. They cannot really do a lot of things if the study requires the maybe if they want to study something that is like a very dangerous behavior, they cannot really get people to be in a study where they simulate the same scenario. They have to look at real life incidents of that behavior instead, and then try to get a conclusion from that. And this will kind of make the study much less rigorous in certain cases, because they cannot control for certain variables, and sometimes there could be a bit of variance in how different people react to certain things, and they may not be able to find all the information that they really need. So that could be a challenge that faces their psychological studies, because even in other medical studies, there are some that cannot be, fully done in a clinical trial kind of manner and have to be done in another way, because the actual like actually trying to do a clinical trial would involve a lot of problems and a lot of ethical issues. So yeah, that's the idea. That's one of the challenges that probably is faced by psychology in terms of their research, I guess. So another challenge, which I'm pretty sure is definitely the case, is that the human brain is quite hard to study. I think this is definitely the case. You can trust me on this. So, well, if you want me to make a point, we haven't even figured out how, like, everything that happens when you sleep. Of course, we do know that people have REM sleep, and then they have like the the deeper and the lighter phases of sleep, but we still haven't figured out everything. So how are we gonna figure out what happens in more complicated things? Like, we really don't understand the human brain all that well, apart from the fact that it has a bunch of neurons, and the neurons make connections, and some parts of the brain do certain things and some other parts of the brain do other things. And we know that the brain is not is like kind of plastic, so it can adapt and stuff, but we don't know the full workings of the brain. It is very, very hard to figure it out, because the brain is more than just a computer, in the sense that it is a very, very complicated one. And this makes it hard to study the brain. And even though there's a lot of technology and new advancements in how to analyze the brain signals and all that, it's still quite not very well understood in the sense. So yeah, that is one other challenge that they face, and that is for sure. Like, it is something that I know. And another reason could be like the third challenge that I've probably identified is that psychology as a field has a certain perception by the public. It has this at least that sense of Freud's influence on it. People just usually think of him when they think of psychology, although there is definitely more to it than Sigmund Freud. And yeah, some people may not be so welcoming towards psychology studies or to psychology as a field in general. And there are definitely people who are not very into therapy in general. They may not really want to see a psychologist, or they may not be very welcoming towards psychologists as well. And that is because, well, psychology is about the brain in general, so it's a bit hard for most people to really understand what they actually study, or like how safe it is, or how it affects them as a person and all that stuff. So yeah, that is probably another challenge that it faces, which is the perception from the general public, or maybe like generally negative perceptions from some people, and not a lot of people actually knowing the usefulness of psychology or recognizing it. Even though there is a certain positive perception by some people, because those people are the ones who actually go on to study psychology, right? There's an increasing number of people studying psychology, and it's because they want to understand the human brain, and they want to understand interactions between people, and they do think that there's some use to this field. And I hope that helps them in the long term. Oops. Okay. But yeah, as I mentioned just now, I may not really know the other challenges or the true challenges that they face, because I'm a bioengineer, not I'm nowhere near this field. So yeah. So if I do find anything useful, I just put the links in the website, and you can just go and look at it in your own time, and then find out more in your own time. Okay, so in conclusion, psychology is definitely a very important and actually more pervasive thing than we've known, in the sense, like, than we think of. It's there in our advertising. It's there in our everyday interactions. It's used for a lot of things, but it's also seen in a negative light by some people, and maybe in a positive light by other people who are those who are actually in the field, for that matter, and has certain controversies that hopefully are will not occur again. Like, there won't be too many controversial things happening again. So yeah, that's that's pretty much it. I hope you found this video useful, even though I'm not an expert on this topic. But yeah, it'll probably help you know where to look. I guess maybe the sources that I provide will be more reliable sources of information, and you can then use that to figure it out yourself. Okay, so if you found this video useful, please press the like button and subscribe. And with that, I would like to say thank you and bye.